Good afternoon, and welcome to our online discussion of euthanasia, assisted suicide, and other ending of life questions. My name is Amy Hasbrook, and this is Christian DeBlay.
Hi.
And we are part of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, and this is our discussion for February 20th, 2015. Thank you very much. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, and our goal is to unify, inform, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that have a discriminatory impact on people with disabilities in Canada especially, but also around the world to spread the word. I'm looking for my this week. Let's see. Our position is fairly simple. There are many reasons we have our position, but essentially there's the four big ones, I guess, is that legalizing assisted suicide is discriminatory because everyone already has the right to commit suicide and to have, it's unnecessary because we already have the right to commit suicide and to refuse medical treatment and have palliative sedation if we need it. It's discriminatory because, well, people without disabilities receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die. People with disabilities who express the same feelings are encouraged and assisted to kill themselves. Also, we believe that the choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have the choice of where and how they live. And finally, safeguards have not been effective in the places where assisted suicide is legal to prevent people with disabilities from being killed against their will. The goal of our discussion is to give people with disabilities a place, a forum to talk about our particular issues. Also because the debate is generally described as being between conservatives who oppose assisted suicide and liberals who support it. Those of us with disabilities want to bring in our more progressive view that it's about discrimination and public policy. Also to give people with disabilities a place to talk about it because we've had the experience of how things can go wrong in the healthcare system. And finally, we want to bring in our direct perspective and talk about these issues from our point of view, which is a little bit different from everybody else's, and give ourselves a chance to talk about it and hash things out among ourselves. There are lots of ways to participate. First, you can go to our Google Plus Hangouts on Air, and you'll find our discussion right there. Or you can go to YouTube and do a search for euthanasia and disability and find our online discussions there. Or if you want information on what we talk about here, you can go to our website, which is tvndy.ca. You can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/toujourvivant-not-dead-yet. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @TVNDY, or you can send an email to info@tv-ndy.ca. Okay, so our topics for today are the options following the Carter decision and story collection. So following the Carter decision, the Supreme Court allowed a 1-year delay before the criminal code provisions that prohibit assisted suicide will be invalidated.
Really short.
Yeah, it's a very short delay. And there are a lot of things that could happen within the next few months. One is that Parliament could decide to do nothing, and that would lead to a situation where assisted suicide happens without any restriction or regulation. The second is that Parliament could quickly adopt a law to regulate an assisted suicide or euthanasia, and that would be kind of a slapdash.
Yeah, when you mean quick, it's quick.
Yeah, quick and dirty, as they say. Parliament could ask for an extension from the court on the deadline, and that would allow them to do a better study and how to manage assisted suicide and or euthanasia. Or finally, Parliament could invoke what's called the notwithstanding clause. That's Article 33 of the Canadian Constitution, and essentially overrule the Supreme Court for a short time. So the first option, if Parliament, that they could do nothing. 2015 is an election year, and voters are going to go to the polls on October 19th. So that only leaves 4 months to the end of the spring session, the parliamentary session, and 2 months after the election to adopt a bill to regulate medical killing. Despite the fact that there is already a bill on the order paper in both chambers, they haven't done anything about it. There's been no study, no hearings on those bills up to the present.
And the missing months are due to the time to take power when the election is done and the election time itself. So it's 2-3 months, and that's what's giving the amount to do 1 year.
Right, exactly. Yeah, a lot of that is taken up with the election and the campaign and the setting up of the new government, if there's a new government.
Yeah.
So without any limits and regulations, pretty much anyone could obtain a medical aid in dying, as the court describes.
Basically, it's a free-for-all.
Right. So rather than limiting it to people with disabilities, it would be essentially egalitarian system that everybody could have medically assisted suicide. There wouldn't be any limits that exist now. So it would be kind of wide open after that year is up. That's if Parliament decides to do nothing. And that's one possibility. So the next possibility is that Parliament could do a sort of quick and dirty passing a bill. They could study Stephen Fletcher's proposed bills since they are already on the table. However, there isn't enough time in the spring to do any detailed study or to hold hearings or to make amendments or anything like that.
Just as an example, for Quebec, it takes 3 years of work to just make a law which is not really, really good. And if you try to go faster, it will be worse.
Right. The Quebec National Assembly in December of 2010 ordered the commission. The commission released its report in March of 2012. Then the bill was filed in June of 2013, and then it was passed in 2014. So that was more than 3 years, 3.5 years, basically, for Quebec. And that was a pretty fast process in Quebec. So
a few months, it will be too short
right.
to get a good result.
To get any kind of study. And we know that there were problems with the Quebec study. So we've already talked about the problems with Stephen Fletcher's bill in our online discussions, and you can check that out on the March 28th and December 5th of 2014 editions. You can find that on YouTube. And let's just say that the safeguards are inadequate to ensure that disabled people won't be pressured to choose assisted suicide and euthanasia if we go with Stephen Fletcher's current bill. So that would be kind of a disaster.
Close to, yeah.
Yeah, so doing a quick and dirty job, not a good idea. Parliament could ask for an extension on the deadline. It could ask the Supreme Court to give an extension, and the court would have to decide whether it would do that. Despite what the plaintiffs in the Carter case said, Parliament has already spoken on the issue of assisted suicide. Back in 2010, a bill to legalize the practice was defeated by a vote of 228 to 59. So that was pretty...
Download Java components. To view this web content, you need to install the Java runtime environment.
Okay, so this follows a pattern of this large defeat, and this follows a pattern of that's happened 140 times in the United States already. And that's where a bill is introduced in a state assembly with great enthusiasm by the person introducing the bill. The legislators then hear from people with disabilities that it's a discriminatory and unjust policy, and the bill is defeated. And so far, the score in the US is 140 defeats to 3 victories for assisted suicide and euthanasia.
So it's quite clear that what's really happened in the world right now.
So the people who are pushing assisted suicide are saying, oh, everybody's going for this, everybody wants it, it's a landslide for assisted suicide and euthanasia. No, it's not.
Not at all.
No, it's, for every year there are more and more submissions, requests for bills, and every year, they're defeated. So, yeah, so we just need to keep that in mind. If the Parliament took the time to really study a bill, it would maybe be able to respond to some of the very deep questions that were raised by the Carter decision. And some of those questions are, how are we going to reconcile allowing assisted suicide with our public policy to prevent suicides?
Kind of impossible.
Yeah.
You prevent suicide or you allow suicide. It's kind of clear.
Right. Another question that it raises is, how do we prevent the circumstances that lead to requests for assisted suicide? And in the Quebec bill, they talk about having palliative care, and that's important, but they didn't talk about the conditions that make people with disabilities want assisted suicide. And that's, if you look at the Oregon reports of people who request it, it doesn't have that much to do with physical pain. It has to do with being, not having services at home to enable you to stay at home. It has to do with disability.
Yeah.
And so, another question that's raised by the decision is, how do we detect and eliminate the negative views of the quality of life of people with disabilities that are played out in the policy and practice of assisted suicide and euthanasia? Because that's a pretty fundamental part.
Most disabled people have heard, I better be dead than like to be like you. And it's happening for most of disabled people,
right,
at least one time.
Right, and that's the foundation of these laws, that attitude. And it's that attitude that drives these laws, but that's a discriminatory attitude. And if we have those attitudes driving these laws, it's always going to be discriminatory. So,
obvious.
Yeah. And another question is, how can we assure that the people who are receiving assisted suicide are really competent and making a clear and informed decision?
In all those propositions of law, none or close to none have asked for
psychiatric evaluation.
Psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah.
But this is the question: are you able or not? And it doesn't test it.
Right. And sometimes the law will say you may do a psychiatric evaluation, but for example, in Oregon, those are almost never done. At the beginning they did a few, but now it's maybe one or two a year.
Easier to kill you.
Yeah.
Faster.
Right, exactly. Okay, so the last option, the last thing that could happen in the next few months is that Parliament could invoke what's called the notwithstanding clause. And that's Article 33 of the Canadian Constitution.
Normally, a political party doesn't like to touch it,
right,
even with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, exactly. This section would allow Parliament to declare that a law applies regardless of any violation of the Charter of Rights. And the notwithstanding clause, once it's applied, would last for 5 years. So in this case, the sections of the criminal code that prohibit medical aid in dying would remain in effect despite the court's ruling that they violate the plaintiff's rights under Articles 1 and 7 of the Charter of Rights. And that all that to say that Section 33 would cancel the effect of the Carter decision for a limited time, and the Parliament would have to reapprove use of the notwithstanding clause after 5 years. So
Yeah. Every 5 years, if they want to carry it, they have to vote it again, and no government like it.
So obviously, this would be the best, effect for us. It would basically cancel the decision. It would mean that assisting suicide is still illegal. However, the Harper government has already said that it won't invoke the notwithstanding clause. And as long as the media and surveys say that Canadians want assisted suicide, and those polls are using erroneous data and conclusions, the government believe it would be political suicide to act against the Supreme Court on this.
Which is basically true.
Right. However, we can still push for it. We can still show that this is something that we want to have happen. It's, my function here is to give you information, and you can make your choice. So this is the information I'm offering. The discussion of strategies and responses continues, and if you have any ideas, please contact us. One thing I want to add is there are a lot of groups here who are working on this, and people come from different perspectives. But really, we need to all work together, because this is a situation like no one's ever seen before. That, well, I guess other countries have seen it, but we haven't seen it in Canada.
But for us, it's a really threatening.
Right. And also situation. Canada is the biggest country that so far would adopt this law for a whole country. And so this is unprecedented, and we need to work together, in my opinion. This is my opinion. We need to work together and not say, well, I don't want to work with you because, you wear your shoes funny or whatever. We need to be sensitive to each other's issues and leave our differences at the door and be good to each other, but we also need to work together
to a simple target and a clear target.
Right.
No to euthanasia and assisted suicide.
Right. So the religious people have to back off, they have to just say no assisted suicide, no euthanasia, and leave the whole abortion thing out of it, leave other stuff out of it. And
so to group as many people against it as possible.
Right, exactly. Stick to the messages we can all agree on, and, work together.
Yes.
So there you go. That's my opinion. Okay, so the next item is on story collection, and the people who promote assisted suicide and euthanasia have a lot of spokespeople who tell very touching stories about their personal experience. Am I fidgeting too much?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just encourage you.
Okay. But people with disabilities, we don't tend to use our personal experiences of discrimination in hospitals and institutions to counteract our opponents. And that's not good. We need to start doing that more. Because without these stories, the public and politicians think that we're alarmist. And they say that. And we see that when we make comments online, people say, you people are exaggerating. They say we're exaggerating the problems, and they say we're unrealistic.
But as far as we see, what we just announced happened yet.
Right. I mean, I can go and give testimony and say, this is what I know, and I've talked to these people, and these are what people tell me, but the legislatures, the deputy, the legislators aren't going to believe me unless they hear it from people in the community.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to start collecting collecting stories, because no one knows and hears what happens behind the closed doors in institutions. But in order to stop the abuse, we have to show what's really going on. So there are a lot of reasons that someone might not want to tell their story, and we understand that, we get that. Like that a person doesn't want to say anything bad about a facility where they live or a hospital that they might have to go back to for care because they're afraid of retribution. And
this is make it very difficult to speak against an institution.
Right, and we had that experience last year when we were trying to get the best care, and we called the clinic where you get your care, and we were asking who's the doctor in charge of your case. Then they called the hospital back, and the hospital gave you a hard time, right?
Yes,
right.
That's a really hard time, but there was a kind of not really happy the way we just treated it. And the only thing that we want to do was to communicate with our normal doctor.
Right, right. Or at least, know who was his doctor, because our doctor was on parenting leave, and communicate with that person, but we never were able to. Right? So, so that's one reason people don't like to tell their stories. Another reason is that the experience is just so traumatic that it's hard to talk about. And I often give the example of a friend of mine who is a college professor, and he was in the hospital. He was very, very sick, and late in the middle of the night one night, a doctor came in and was telling him that he was going to be in bed for a year, and he was going to use all his money, and he was going to become a burden on his family, and blah, blah, blah. And the doctor could give him an injection right now, and he would go peacefully. And that was, my friend obviously said no, and,
he was hard enough.
Right. He was strong enough to do that.
He was strong.
Right.
And there's not everybody who could be strong as him.
Right, exactly. But the other thing is that my friend is a college professor, and he knew that his family was behind him. But even so, it took him years to be able to talk about this, because it was so hurtful to him that this happened. And this is a person who knows that he didn't deserve it.
Yeah, so a weaker person will have hard trouble to talk about whatever happened.
Or not so much a weaker person, but a person who has less support, who has lower self-esteem, who,
lower education,
right.
lower sense of information and things like that.
Right, right. So a person is more isolated. So those things are going to be very hard. And a lot of people come out of those situations with post-traumatic stress and that kind of thing, because it really is attacking you personally.
Same thing happened to military who came back from combat. They sometimes never talk about their experience for the lifetime.
Right, right. But and so we understand why people don't like to talk. And the other reason is that people sometimes just feel alone, as if they're the only person who's ever been abused, or as if they've done something wrong to deserve the abuse. And neither of those things is true. You don't deserve to be abused, and you're not alone. I was abused when I was a kid, and I've had really difficult experiences in hospitals myself, and I know lots of other people who have. So you don't have to live alone with it, and understanding that makes it hard to talk about. But if you tell your story, it's a little easier, but also you can hear other people tell their stories about that sort of thing, and that makes life, it makes you feel less alone. And we're collecting these stories on my YouTube channel now. So you can go over to my YouTube channel with my name, doing the search, and you'll find some of these stories. So we understand these problems, and I can relate to them very much. And we have some ideas, for example, for how you can hide your identity, like disguising your face and your voice.
Just putting a black thing over your eyes, and you could not identify anybody,
Right,
or
and you
change
can
your
fuzz your
voice
face
and
yeah.
film only on your back, or there's many ways
Right.
that we could do.
Right, there's a lot of things we can do. We can also provide you some support if you want to tell your story. You know, sometimes it might make you cry or it might make you feel really sad, and we can be there to support you.
Yes.
Because I know what that feels like.
And if you are far away, we could support you by somebody else.
Right.
Or if you are between Rimouski in Quebec and Toronto in Ontario, we could do it ourselves.
Right, we can come out there. And since the Carter decision came out, we've had some calls from people who couldn't believe that assisted suicide or euthanasia could really be adopted, and they're kind of stunned that it's actually happening. And there are other people who didn't really think about what we've been saying all along, that, you know, there's no choice to die as long as you don't have a choice of how you live. And now they're starting to understand. So some people are getting a sense that it's urgent, but it's
a lot could not believe that the government would
really do that. Yeah.
And they do.
Right. It's been more than a year since we called for stories, but to prevent the worst effects of this awful decision, we urgently need people to contribute their stories. So what kind of stories are we looking for? We're looking for stories for if your friends or family told you you'd be better off dead. If you outlived a medical prognosis, so if some doctor told you, oh, you'll only live for another, you know.
Yeah, but it's happened more often than people think. A few months ago, a year ago, we worked on Massachusetts poll referendum, and we present 10 people who each one have 2 separate and different end of life prediction soon. Okay, so it's not so rare. It happened quite a lot of time that doctor just don't know. You will die in a week.
Right.
And 2 years after that, you're still there, and sometimes you're still working.
Right, exactly. We also want to hear from people who are stuck in institutions and sometimes feel like they want to die. We want to hear if you are isolated at home without adequate services and can't get out, or there's architectural barriers to you getting out and ending your isolation.
I'm quite sure that somewhere where there's a lot of snow in winter, you could not go out at all.
Right, exactly. And that can make people feel very depressed and want to die. And, you know, that's often caused by the city doesn't clean the sidewalks or doesn't clean the curb cuts, or you don't have access to personal assistance at home to help you with your daily tasks. If that's the case,
that transportation doesn't exist or not available.
Right. If those things are happening, that means your choice is not a real choice. You know, it means your choice is affected by discrimination. Another kind of story that would be useful is for people who were offered euthanasia or assisted suicide by family or friends or medical professionals, like that person that I was telling you about, the professor. Also, people who feel like they wanted to die and couldn't get any help to improve their situation or to feel better. Sometimes, you know, you say to a therapist or a doctor, I want to die, I feel so bad. And the doctor says, yes, we understand because you're disabled. Of course you want to die. Yeah. So rather than getting help to feel better, they're telling you better off dead. If you have had a therapist say that your problems are because of your disability, that's another thing that makes people...
Most of the time, it's not true. When your disability is a long-time disability, normally you like your life. And this is a wrong way to see people.
Right. Often, you know, sometimes sometimes it can be very, if you live, especially if you live with chronic pain, it can be very tiring and wearing, and you get really frustrated, and we get that too. But a lot of people blame more things on our disabilities than really belong there. So, for example, because of the way I was raised, I have problems with self-esteem, but that's not because I'm blind. It's because people didn't like it that I was blind. So there's a difference there.
Quite one, yeah.
Yeah. Also, we need to hear from people who got slow medical treatment, or, you know, medical people didn't help them very enthusiastically if they had a medical crisis. That happens a lot. It's called slow coat in English. So
Yeah.
That's another problem that folks run into, that the people who are making these policies just don't know about. They don't
Yeah.
understand.
They just say, don't run, maybe you will be better dead than the way easy like that.
Right, right.
It's not the right way to see.
Right.
Even if I'm not really in this condition, I was not really in this condition, they take too much to take care of me.
Well, but
Too
it
much time.
was. I mean, they
Yeah.
basically, they kept moving you further and further from the desk because they didn't want to hear from you. They didn't want to hear how you were in pain.
So it take many hours of very, I know she's pain, very difficult pain to support. One of the most possible pain that you could suffer. My spinal cord was pinched because I have stenosis. Okay, so it's unbelievable. The feeling is like my both leg was just tear off.
Right, and
For many hours in a
Right.
row, not tear off one time and it's ending and just you were just healing. No, it's permanently wear off, and somebody do it and do it and do it again.
Right, right. And I went to the desk every 15 minutes and said, I would like to see the doctor about getting some pain medication for my husband. And they kept saying, no, the doctor will come when he's
When he has time.
Right, when he has time. And I would say, well, can you get a nurse to come, because my husband needs pain medication. He's in a lot of pain. And, you know, we just couldn't get people to act quickly. And that kind of, you know, not being able to move the system is very,
So,
very frustrating.
At this time, if somebody had given me a gun, I probably will be not there
Yeah.
today, because when nobody take care of your pain, and it's very, very excruciating, very difficult, you doesn't have really choice.
Right, right, exactly. Another kind of situation that we need to hear from is people who've either had a do not resuscitate order put on their charts against their will or without their knowledge, or people who've been hassled to sign a do not resuscitate order. And I know people who've gone to the hospital, even for a minor procedure, who've been asked many, many times, sign a DNR, just because they had a disability. And another person who doesn't have a disability wouldn't be asked that over and over again.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you can do a video either by just talking or in a question and answer format. And if
Or any other form that
right, any other format you want. It's best if it's less than 3 minutes, 3 minutes or less, because people have very short attention spans these days.
So we are really not an example.
Right, we're not a good example.
We talk for
Well,
close an hour.
we'll give you an example in a few minutes. I'll have Kristen ask me questions. So if you can't do a video yourself, or you have questions, please send an email and we can answer your questions, and we can also come help you make a video or arrange for somebody to help if you live too far away. If you live in Winnipeg or Edmonton or Vancouver, well, we would love to come out and visit you. We can't really do that because we don't have the money.
Budgetary.
Right, so, but we can arrange for somebody to come and help you.
Yeah.
You know, make a video at your house. So we would be happy to do that. And finally, we'll do an example of a question and answer video, and we'll try to make it under 3 minutes. So here you go, Christian.
Okay. Could you tell us about yourself?
Okay, my name is Amy Hasbrook. I live in Valleyfield, Quebec, and my disability is that I'm legally blind, and I also have depression caused by child abuse.
Okay.
And PTSD.
Oh, great. Okay. And you doesn't have any trouble to identify yourself?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay,
happy
great.
to identify myself.
Great. Not everybody.
Right.
Okay. What is your opinion about assisted suicide, and how did you come to that opinion?
Okay, I believe assisted suicide is a very bad public policy, and it's dangerous and discriminatory for people with disabilities. And I came to that opinion because I worked on abuse of people with disabilities, and I saw how parents who killed disabled children were treated more leniently by the criminal justice system than parents who killed non-disabled children. And I saw that was discrimination, and I knew that that was the same kind of treatment about assisted suicide and euthanasia.
Okay. Describe a time where a medical professional, as doctor, nurse, social worker, etc., encourage you to sign a do not resuscitate order, or encourage you not to refuse treatment or have treatment withdrawn.
Actually, that's never happened to me, so I have to say that it's never happened.
Describe an incident where a family member suggested or encouraged you to refuse treatment, have a treatment withdraw, or kill yourself.
That also has never happened, although I have to say that strangers have walked up to me on the street and said, I'd rather be dead than be like you.
Yeah, it's happened quite a lot of time to handicapped people.
Yeah.
Have you ever been depressed or thought about suicide?
Yes, I have been depressed a bunch of times. A lot. Pretty much all the time.
Okay. If so, did you act on those feelings?
I have, well, let's see. Twice I've had to go into the psychiatric hospital. Once it was for 1 day, and the second time it was for a week, because I knew I could not take care of myself anymore. I couldn't be sure that I wouldn't hurt myself.
Okay. How did you get past those feelings to be alive today?
Well, part of it was that I had, my sisters were very helpful and supportive. Part of it was that I knew that I was a danger to myself, and I decided that I needed to not have to be responsible for myself for a little while, and needed help eating every day. And I also got support from my family and friends to get through that period.
Okay.
And a therapist.
And a therapist, great.
That's important.
What do you think people should know about assisted suicide?
I think people need to know that first of all, it really does happen that people are coerced and forced against their will and manipulated into asking for assisted suicide, that the safeguards do not work, and that it's fundamentally discriminatory. And there is really no way that you can have safeguards that will work and be effective, and it should never ever be legalized.
Thanks. What needs to happen to prevent people from wanted and assisted suicide?
Well, people need to have, first of all, services to enable them to live independently in the community and to be integrated in the community. And second of all, 3 things. The second thing is people need to have effective palliative care to ease pain and to live as pain-free as possible. And finally, people need emotional support and to not feel that devalued, and they need to feel like a valued part of society. And when you have an assisted suicide law, that is the opposite of that. That says that this group of people is not valuable to society.
Yeah, the life of one
Right.
is not equal to the life of another.
Right.
Why do you think it's important to speak about assisted suicide?
Well, I think it's especially important for disabled people to talk about it because we are limited in our choices, and the discrimination we live with does affect our choices and push us in that one direction, and we need to talk about it as much as possible, because right now the people who are talking about it are mostly people who've just become disabled and are still in that shock and grief period, and they have very distorted ideas about disability, so we need to talk about it.
Okay. What do you think we should do to educate people about assisted suicide?
Oh, well, telling our stories is a big, important part. I wish I had the money to take out ads, and I wish that the media would listen to us more attentively. And, you know, I wish I could be sat down and have an hour-long interview with, you know, major news programs to talk about these issues, because what we're saying here is not getting out into the public, and that's frustrating.
Very frustrating, I agree. Do you have other comments you'd like to add?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
No.
So I think it's the end for today,
Right.
and we wish to have you next Friday
Right.
for another session.
Let me just remind everybody how to get in touch with us.
Yes.
First of all, you can send us an email at info @tv-ndy.ca. You can follow me on Twitter at @TVNDY. You can go to our website at tvndy.ca, or you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet. If you want to watch old broadcasts of our online discussion, I made referral to a couple of them today. You can go to my YouTube channel, and my name is written there on the screen, Amy Hasbrook, and you can do a search on YouTube for euthanasia and disability. That will bring you to the channel. And we have, I haven't even counted them, but we have since September of 2013, we've been doing these. So there's lots of information up, and you can watch an old broadcast. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Next
Take care.
Goodbye.